Our next presenter is Jason Simpson from Magseis Fairfield. We're looking forward to hearing more about you, your company, and how Quantrix fits in. Thank you for being here, Jason. Let me hand things over to you. It looks like you already have the screen.
I appreciate it, Brendan. And I'll give the brief hello, and then I'll get off the camera so you just focus on my presentation. Like Brendan said, I'm Jason Simpson. I'm the Senior Manager of Commercial Analytics for Magseis Fairfield. I'm a little long in the tooth there. I've been there 13 years, and I'll roll with it unless. So Magseis Fairfield is an ocean bottom node company. What that means for most people is that we go to look to see what's below the ocean floor to help refine oil and gas exploration and production. We've been in the industry for 40 years. The company came together in 2018 with the consolidation of two very large seismic companies, Magseis and Fairfield. With that experience, like the screen says, we've 40 years of experience. We've got the largest node inventory worldwide. If you look at the pictures on the right, the yellow sensor you're seeing there, that's what I refer to as a node, also called an ocean bottom node. And the picture slightly above it is one of the ways we deploy our equipment subsurface on exploration assets. Annual market share for any seismic company, so somewhere between $750 and $1 billion a year. We're a public company, so I can fortunately share 2021 revenue was 258 million and EBITDA of 47 million. Sounds great. 18% profit on EBITDA. However, seismic is extremely capital intensive, and I'll get into why this is so important in a few minutes. But at any given time, there's 5 to 6 competitors in the seismic market, and there's 4 to 5 really large competitors. Of course, we're one of the 4 larger competitors. And then bottom left, I kind of gave you some statistics for the last 15 years. So in the last 15 years, we've done 900,000 node deployments and slightly over 100 surveys. You say, okay, 900,000 deployments in 15 years, and I would be willing to bet some of the analysts in the room have already done the math. That's right around 100 deployments a day. Why this is key to us is we don't necessarily work 365 days a year. We are subject to market conditions. So in an 80 or 90% year, we ended up with somewhere between 175 and 225 deployments. So that's a constant movement of that image on the right-hand side of the screen. So like most people that come to Quantrix, and I'm sure most are in this call, it's what challenges do we face as a company? So we take that node and we place it on the ocean floor. We do this in one of two ways, ROVs or with a cable system. And we do this with precision. So we do this so we can replicate it year after year after year. One of the other factors that complicates our business is we're a worldwide company. You see the list there, US Gulf, Mexico, Africa, India, UK, Mexico. There's only 2 continents we've never shot seismic on, and that is, or off the coast of, that's Antarctica and Australia. And I'd be willing to bet Antarctica is probably always going to be a no-go zone. Next bullet point down, we have the factors that we have to consider, and these are just a few of the factors we consider every time we bid a project. Time is bolded there, and it's obviously the most complex and most difficult feature that we have to forecast for. While it's the most important, where we are, country, taxes in the current country, the conditions we're going to operate in, the local fuel costs we're going to operate in, how our crew gets there. These are all facets that we have to deal with when we bid a project. And the next line is my funny for the day. Every factor is a variable and every variable is a factor, and that's we kind of want to play with the words there and say, just because time is a variable to us doesn't mean it's not a factor in every project. The same thing with fuel cost. All those listed above are both a variable and a factor for us. They can make or break us, and they can also be our biggest ally. And in that, scenarios became our friend for modeling. As the seismic industry got larger, it became more cutthroat, and we had to say, how do we do this work bigger, faster, stronger, safer? And scenarios are how we do that. And obviously, like everybody on this call, we have technical and business risks. It doesn't matter if you're a manufacturing company or you're an oil and gas contractor or you produce widgets for a living. You're worried about your customers and you're worried about your competition. The two biggest crutches that we all have to lean on. And we always have to deliver for our customers on time and as promised, and while also keeping our competitors away from prime opportunities that we're seeking. So these are 15 or so of the things that we really sit down and look at in every time, and I don't have to sit and read the list. These are just common parameters for working anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if we're working in a factory and we're producing widgets. We have to be concerned with electricity for the building, air conditioning for the building, maintenance on the building. We do all the same things every other company does. We just do them offshore. So our environment's particularly hostile to production, but face the same key problems every other company faces when they look at things. And that's, how do we do it faster? How do we do it better? How do we do it where we need to do it in a new place? How do we schedule things on time? And then on the right hand side, we're kind of looking at which piece of equipment do we use? Do we use multiple pieces of equipment on the same project? Or do we go to a model where it's easier to partner with somebody in another location? And that's, you'll see that Quantrix kind of lends itself to us being able to say, what if we want to do this differently? And one of the biggest ones, keep in mind, is that one vessel or two vessel. That I'll highlight that reel in a minute. So almost everybody on this call is going to laugh and just give me the applause when you agree with me. Our problem was spreadsheets, in particular that one that starts with an E, that I won't say the name. We'd spend hours developing projects in, see, Lindsay, I see that you saw it. We spend hours in Excel planning and reforecasting scenarios and saying and having what if statements. And anybody that deals in Excel, anytime an executive says, well, what if we do it differently? Of course, the answer is I need to go away, use my Excel, and then come back and give you an answer. The second point, costly errors and missed margin. Obviously, when we're dealing with somewhere between 6 and 12 contracts a year, or making somewhere between 250 and 500 million, the size of the contract matters. That means when you start dropping decimal places, you start to sacrifice significant portions of margin. And like I said earlier, EBITDA was 18%, but razor thin net margins at the end because of capital intensity. And the final problem is for spreadsheets is, what do you do about a circular reference? Everybody on this call has had to deal with a circular reference in Excel. And until Quantrix, I always asked every master Excel user I ran into, how would you deal with a circular reference? The tax accountants always say just round up, but that's never a good answer. Next problem we ran into was how the commercial team, the technical operations team, and the finance team interact with each other. So commercial's dealing with a theoretical piece of time. And you keep hearing me say the word time because that's the critical element of what we do. So commercial deals with a theoretical point of time. It's a 30, 45, 60, 70-day patch. It doesn't matter what year it's in. It's that little piece of operation. Well, the technical operations group worries about what's today and then what's tomorrow. And how can we be better today? How can we be better tomorrow? They don't need to know what on day 65 what happens. They just need to know what's now. And then of course you have the finance team that carries everything about yesterday, today, 6 months, 1 quarter, 1 year, 2 year, depending on what planning phase they're in. So the previous spreadsheet version caused a lot of duplicate work among not only the technical team, but particularly the finance team. And that green point there, the input output doesn't always mean the same. And that's going back to that theoretical block of time the commercial team deals with, and finance cares about the day before that project and the day after that project. So because we were exposed to a manual process in Excel, significant risk had to be put in our bids to counteract that risk. And this is one of my loves of Quantrix, is the lack of revision history. Anybody that's done any budgeting, planning, or any forecasting, open that file folder at the end of the forecasting period, and how many versions do you have? Whether it's V1, V2, V3, or the date plus V1, V2, V3, you end up with 15 versions of the same Excel. And then when you look back 3 months later, now you get to figure out which one was the important one. We suffered from this quite a bit. We'll bid a project, 8 months later, contractor says, okay, come do the project. And then we have to figure out which version of Excel we had, was the final version. And that final point in red was the confidence or lack thereof. Anyone who has dealt in financial modeling or any simulation modeling, anyone at some point in their career they've been asked, are you sure? Now for me, when someone says, are you sure? And I'm dealing in Excel, I say, give me an hour. Let me go check my Excel. And that was one of our big issues, was the second you lose the confidence of the executive management team, now everything comes into question, and it seems to take exponentially longer to get that confidence level back up in a financial planning tool like Excel. So why Quantrix was the ideal tool for us commercially. So I kind of highlighted the key phrases here for us, and it's minutes to multiple scenarios. And you're going to see this for us. We on one project, when we're in the bidding phase, we'll bid anywhere between 1 and 64 options. And while that sounds insane, that's kind of the market that we live in. We if we can scrub a day or we can scrub $1, we're going to do it, and we're going to present it, and we'll make the decision based on that. The manner in which Quantrix handles that scenario instantly attracted me to the software. I can't say enough about scenario modeling, but I'll stop there. So the next point is kind of the in the box is what I highlighted, and basically we handed a model to an analyst, and I know that the analyst can use a certain set of boxes on that canvas, and there's no other boxes that can be harmed, changed, touched, or manipulated. If they try, they get the warning, and ultimately they can't. So having the confidence for the fact that I've released an analyst and said, go forth and prosper with this model, let me know if you need any changes. And I can have extreme confidence in the fact that there are only a certain number of cells that can be changed. And while that's a huge amount of cells in our model, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but it provides a confidence level for me at least. And then next point was the detail that we can model in. I keep going back to that time thing again. I'm going to do the teaching method. I'll repeat it enough times. Y'all have time ingrained in your heads, and we can do it to any detail we want, whether that be 10th, 100th, thousandths of an hour. I can model minutes a day if I needed to. So next point is automatic executive summary and financial critical outputs. The speed at which we can model scenarios and produce the executive summary has caused a lot of what comes to the next slide is confidence and from our executive leadership. Previously, we would have had what if scenario, 3, 4, 5 different versions. The analyst would go away. They'd create those 4 or 5 different versions. 2 or 3 people would check it, and then we'd come back a day later, 2 days later, and say, executive committee, here you go. Here's the options you wanted, and then that either caused more scenario modeling or approval. So the fact that we can model live in front of the executive leadership team and have confidence that the executive summary rolls through perfectly correct provides a lot of confidence. And that rolls to that last point is I can watch as an analyst model live in Quantrix, create additional scenarios, play the what if games. And because of the data, the simple data checks that I've added to the executive summary, I don't have to worry that anything has gone wrong. It's an instantaneous flag for me. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. Quantrix is there's no need to go to a separate checks tab or have, we've all done checks in Excel, and your checks end up all over the place, or they end up in one tab alone because there's 110 of them, as with our previous model. And this is one of my passions. We've deployed Quantrix in a non-commercial way, and this is one of the fun topics I've had to deal with Quantrix is Magseis Fairfield is committed to become a carbon neutral company like most. Because we're public, we publicly report our emissions. We do that yearly, although internally we report them quarterly. As a matter of history, we did the first carbon neutral ocean bottom node survey. And when you think about how much that really takes, we burn somewhere between 6,000 and 15,000 gallons of fuel a day. So when we're talking about carbon neutral survey, we have a carbon footprint. We're going to reduce it. Now, how Quantrix fits into that is prior to Quantrix, or deploying Quantrix in a different way than the commercially, we took an Excel out of a database that was online, reformatted it, relabeled it, cleaned it, and then put it into a PowerPoint like most people would, and then sent it around the executive committee. With the Quantrix, we're able to what we call extract, refine, and relabel all of our emissions for reporting. Instead of hours to relabel, reformat, and put into the PowerPoint form, our Quantrix model pulls from the database directly, relabels as we've given instructions prior, and then puts it into a format that our BI tool can then manipulate. Of the 5 to 7 hours of savings that I've noted here, Quantrix can easily be accounted for 2 to 2.5 of that. And the rest of it's a smart BI tool. So you could kind of give Quantrix a little bit of credit for the BI interface as well. So now into my favorite part. This is why I like comic books as a kid. We're gonna go into picture mode. So I stopped here to say this is how important scenarios are to us as a company. I wanted the top right screen to be, this is scenarios and this is how important they are. The max I've seen so far is 26 in one model. And it wasn't a limitation of why we didn't go further. It was just a limitation of we modeled something 26 times and we knew it was enough. Quantrix never failed us, never slowed down, never did anything. And I kind of want to give you a view of what we mean by scenario modeling. So we have a base parameter, and because we're a public company, I've had to redact quite a bit of this, so forgive me for the redaction, but we model everything based on how many boats we're going to use. We can use 1 boat, we can use 4 boats, we can use 16 boats. So obviously these offshore vessels are somewhere between 150 and 300 feet long, so we have quite the presence in the ocean. When we enter a number of boats, obviously Quantrix is a smart enough tool that it can deploy it and say, okay, I need 1 boat and I need the cost for 1 boat. The interesting part is when you come down to a second scenario, I've now changed it, primary node vessels to 4. Quantrix deploys 4 boats and tells me I need 4 boats worth of cost. Makes it really easy for the analyst to see, I haven't filled in a blank yet. However, if the analyst forgets to fill in the blank, it's always going to do the override. So we have the default column and the final, but it's replicated it over every individual node in case the analyst makes a mistake. We always have a default cost. And again, because Quantrix is smart enough to know this is not the base scenario, you can't override the base scenario of the node. So if you wanted to override that, you had to go back to the base scenario to override. This is an endless help to us and has probably saved us 6, if not 7 figures inside of the life of Quantrix. And we are currently coming up on almost a year of Quantrix. So from start to finish, and we'll go into that in a second. Again, public company, I had to redact a little bit of this. These are the 15 categories we estimate time in. So you can say, Jason, 24 hours is a day, 60 minutes is an hour. Yes, but we have to break things down to that granular of detail so we know what our time-based costing is. Can't tell you where it is, but in the ingeniousness of our implementer, he was able to get around the circular reference, and our circular reference was in time. And I'm sorry I have to be vague, but that's the one redaction I had from management. So the other ways we deploy Quantrix that I wasn't able to redact enough to make it make sense was our cash flow by scenario. This has been a vital tool to us. It's actually inside of our commercial tool. So every scenario we run, an automatic cash flow scenario is created for the finance team just to review before we go into an executive approval meeting. So it's endlessly important for us to be able to model revenue not only by payment terms, but cost by payment terms. We're in an industry where those things can fluctuate between 15 and 90-day terms. So we have to model things very specifically by cost category. One of the beautiful things, our implementation, and Sean, I saw you're online, so I hope you're blushing, is the revenue swim lanes by project by month. There's a few people that have seen this outside of the company, and all of them have been wowed by it. And when I say swim lanes, tornado chart, same thing. I mean, obviously we can take this to another software program, but the idea is that we could have all financial data live in the same platform. And that carries down to the same planning tool for crew movements. The planning tool for the crew movements is, again, another tornado chart, but allows our executives to see where crews start to overlap, where crews have a break in their schedule that we need to fill, and things that impact our P&L. So here's our journey. And again, I'll plug him now, and I'll probably plug him a couple more times. Sean Mercer Batesser is a brilliant Quantrix modeler, has taught me a tremendous amount of Quantrix. I was not a programmer. I knew a little bit of VBA, and that was about it. And anybody that's on the background of Quantrix knows VBA and Quantrix do not speak the same language. From deployment to first test models, 26 days. And that includes the Thanksgiving holiday for the Americans. So we got the first model within 26 days. And then by the 45-day mark, we had stopped replicating everything from Excel and Quantrix at the same time, and had complete faith in the Quantrix model itself. And mind you, that 45 days included my Mexico vacation, so there's some of that delay that was due to me. Once we deployed after the 45-day mark, demonstrated it was better than our Excel. And what I mean by better than our Excel is there were a few percentage points that our Excel obviously was calculating incorrectly, and Quantrix is actually able to calculate the correct number. That took a little bit of time. That was probably 7 of those 45 days was me figuring out that the Excel was actually wrong and Quantrix was actually right. And how we got the finance buy-in was the ease at which I was able to change Quantrix per their instruction. They didn't exactly love our first executive summary. I was able to manipulate it, put our tax consequences in there and our line items and live in front of them, and they wanted to deploy it in some of their aspects of business, i.e. the revenue swim lanes and things like that. And one of the key factors here is how we hand over our Quantrix model. So we have an interface now from our commercial team to our technical operations team and then to finance. So all three of the stakeholders have their own piece. It's all inside of Quantrix. They all have an ability to manipulate the model in their own view without having to harm the original base model. And then the final output is obviously something finance still takes to Excel, but that's an internal problem, not progress, not us. And that's it for me. If anybody's got any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. This is a great presentation. And it looks like, yeah, we do have a few minutes for questions. I can kick one off here. Can you explain how you've spread awareness of Quantrix in your organization?
So I very much grassrooted it. And I'm sorry for the corny phrase, but just showing people what's possible was far easier than telling them what was possible. So procurement, for example, we're trying to figure out a way to deploy their reports a little bit better using Quantrix, but just demonstrating the financial model to them, the commercial financial model, was a far easier sell than trying to develop something that they didn't need. And same thing with the finance organization. Like I said, when they saw how I was able to change the commercial tool to be more in line with how they report, suddenly it was, what else can this tool do? And that's how we ended up with the emissions data reporting process. Is the leader of that organization said, can we do this better without Excel? Because you said this is the replacement for Excel.
Great, thank you. And here's, we're getting some in now. How big is your model?
Oh, I was hoping somebody was going to ask me that question. So I have to rewind a little bit, and I think I have a couple minutes to rewind. Our Excel model, for instance, was 16,000 formulas. 1,600 of those were unique, and the remaining were just repetitive over the same tabs with different names. It had 109 macros in it. It had 135 checks. So that gives you some scale at which our model was. The current Quantrix model is under 800 formulas. So we went from 16,000 to 800 and have more functionality, if that answers your question. Size and megabyte, you're going to make me open it. And Rich, thank you. Again, you're going to get another plug. Erica did it. You were an endless help to me. Brendan, if you'll just take the screen back, I will tell you how big my model is. I got one open. 1,131 kilobytes. Sorry, I didn't convert it. It was just instantaneous. The Excel is massive.
And here's another one. Favorite Quantrix feature. What do you use the most?
And this goes to a back end more than a front end, but the autofill has become an endless source for me to correct what I've done wrong. And that's when you're typing a formula and you're trying to reference another matrix. The fact Quantrix is able to smart enough to go, okay, I'm 4 matrix away, but he's obviously trying to go after the same thing, and gives me a list of things that I can use. So if you set your model up in a good way, it makes your life endlessly better.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Scan the chat real quick. If not, I will move things on to our intermission. All right, I'm not seeing any, but thank you so much, Jason. Awesome presentation, and thank you for answering the questions.
Thank you, Brandon.